Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of More Than You Asked For. That's a little bit of JavaScript and a whole lot of talking with me, your boy, Kyle Shevlin. Hope you can join me again for another week, and I'm really excited for tonight. As I do every week, you know what? Let's tweet it out to the homies that that we're going live. So. Brian Vaughn is really excited to read Oathbringer. Just thought you should know. All right. The stream is live. Join me on Twitch at, what is that address these days? Twitch.tv/Kyle Shevlin. See there. All right, and we'll close down Twitter. And as we do each week, you know, I'll recap you on some stuff, and we'll wait for some people to get in the chat. I'm sure I'll probably have to talk about it a couple times throughout the night. That's how it always goes. But all right, so what happened to me in the last week? Well, probably the biggest thing on my mind is that my team had a full team like summit. We brought all the developers from San Francisco and Portland, and even we got a remote dev in North Carolina, and we brought them all here to Portland, so it was kind of nice not to have to travel. And we just all got together, and we had a couple days, Monday through Wednesday, doing workshops together and spending a little time getting to know each other a little bit more. And it was great. I think almost every engineer gave a talk of some sort. Learned a lot about Fastly and about like what we're trying to do as a company. And then just kind of learned a little bit more about the, excuse me one second. Hey, stop it. I don't need to tell all my fans that you need to behave better. Don't scratch the carpet. Sorry. You know, those of you who are pet owners or parents, you know, you gotta discipline. As I was saying, like I think everyone gave a talk, and it was really interesting to like get to hear some of the various expertise that my teammates have, or maybe just what they care most about the product we're putting out. So yeah, you know, it was just interesting to spend some time with them and get to know them. But I will say, spending 3 days with them and 12 plus hours Monday and Tuesday, and then a full day today, I admittedly I'm really tired. I'm pretty exhausted, and it might show a bit tonight, but I'm kind of hoping that we could power through it. That you know, we'll do some good work tonight, and yeah, that yeah, if I'm a little tired, that's why. If I choose to duck out a little early, that's why. It's nothing to do with y'all. I love y'all, and I love spending time coding with y'all, but that might be why. Just forewarning. But yeah, other than that, some other good news would be, oh yeah, you might have seen the tweet today. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm pretty excited about this, so I want to share the tweet with y'all on the stream. I bet you most of you have already, I bet you many of you have already liked it. Why are you going to my account? I just want to go to my profile. Oh, Twitter. There we go. No idea why it's doing that, but this one. So yeah, I got the official word this week at my first conference proposal was accepted, and I'm going to be talking about functional programming at Google Developers Group, DevFest Silicon Valley, my bad, next month in December. I'm super stoked about that. I've been just starting to put out conference proposals for the first time in like the last few months. I think I made a few proposals to like React Rally last I guess earlier in the summer, and that was really the first time I tried. Yeah, I'm really excited to start getting out there and maybe sharing some of the education and the stuff we talk about on the stream with people around the world, or maybe not the world. That's a little ambitious, but at least around these here parts. If I ever get invited somewhere overseas, I think that would be absolutely incredible. Probably the only way I'll ever probably get to travel at this rate is just to get invited to go places and do it, or maybe my company or something sponsors me to go to a foreign conference. And that would be awesome. I would love to meet some of you people in Europe who follow me, especially in the UK. I know there's a bunch of you. Some of you stay up late and even hang out with me. I can't believe it. Or those of you further to the east in Europe, you guys are awesome. Yeah, that would be really cool to go see the world that way. But yeah, I got accepted. Proposal. I'm hoping this is like the start of some good things. What I'm going to be focusing on in this talk on functional programming is the title is Just Enough Functional Programming to be a Danger to Yourself and Coworkers. And really what it is an intro to functional programming in JavaScript. And, maybe sometime on the stream I will give you the contents of that talk. Yeah. But I'm really hoping it's the start of something good. I would really like to start talking, so I'm pretty excited about that. Not really sure about other good things. I apologize if you can hear my cat using the litter box. That's his. That's where he's got to go. So, nature finds a way, right? Like, all right. So. Let's try and remember where we were last week and make some progress moving forward. I'm gonna, as I do, I'm gonna share the link with y'all. This is React 101. Should come up in a second. If you want to follow along with what I'm doing, or at least see the lessons that I've been working through, please go to this repository and clone it or fork it, or as I've said before, give me stars. I will shamelessly take them. But as I try each week, commits will show the work that we've done so that you can like follow the diff as a way of learning what we were talking about. I'm going to admit I was a really bad person this last week. I told you we had the engineering team summit, and I had other things. We all just have adulting to do, and I honestly have had so little time in the last 5-6 days that I was a bad person, and I did not get any of the work we did last week committed. I'm not even sure what that work entails. So, I guess we can just give it a gander. Let's look at that diff. Looks like I had to add. Looks like I bumped up some packages. And I added styled components. I remember talking about that. It looks like I also I did a refactor of our actions to use async await instead of using just promises. So you see that a little bit there. And then I started to show some styled components work, replacing some components. Looks like I did that in a bunch of places. Yeah, that's probably the majority of the work that we got through. I think last week was a lot of recap over what we did with Redux. I'm not sure why that changed. Probably some prettier settings change. Yeah, it looks like I must have made the line length wider at some point. No big deal. I did add some sass, and it looks like prettier. Didn't like that line length either. Didn't like that line length. And then just some yarn updates. So I will push this up right now. Let's see if I can't split it out a little bit. We will split the actions. So I'll split out that, and I'll call that a refactor there. So git add source, git CI, refactor thunks to use async await syntax. Okay, and then the rest of it was pretty much the styled component stuff. So I'm just going to add it all as that. So introduce styled components to the code base. And I will push that up to master for y'all. So y'all have a new couple commits to look at. I'm sorry that the notes aren't great. Maybe I'll go back and fix that at some point. So yeah, I see I got a few people watching now. If you want to say hi in the chat at any time, you can. If you ever have questions for me or you need me to explain something further, please let me know in the chat. I'd be happy to do so. So what I was thinking this week for this stream was I kind of wanted to go back a little bit. I feel like in some ways I've kind of skipped ahead of some of the basics that happen in React. And what I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to cover some of the more like how JavaScript and JSX kind of work together. If you were here for the first few streams, we know that JSX is syntactic sugar for JavaScript. We know that JSX is function calls. But there are certain little nuances of JSX that are really useful to us as React developers. And I thought it might be really interesting to kind of work through a bunch of examples where we kind of piece that out and how we can especially do like conditional logic in our React components. And what kind of made me think of this, I hope I can find it. Robin Wyruck, I think is his name. I want to find his blog. I hope this is it. Yeah, this is great. Awesome. So this guy, Robin Wyruck, I hope I'm saying his name at least close enough as possible. He's written a book or two, even maybe at this point, on React and some other things. And he has a post about that's about React and about every possible like conditional you can do in React. And I want to find it because it's kind of the inspiration to me for this article today. I mean, not article, this what I want to practice today with y'all. See if I can't find it. I should have had this up before I came up, but all the conditional renderings in React. There you go. So I tweeted about this article earlier in the week. It's really extensive. It covers literally every possible conditional that you could use in React, and some that I never even considered. So we'll cover the very simple, like, we don't need to cover all of these, but a lot of them will be useful to kind of put in our, as I like to say, arrows in our quiver to really help us do these things. So he's got things like if else, ternaries, the logical and operator, and a switch case, which I've used before, and I really like that. Looks like he's even doing like switch case with some immediately invoked function expressions. And then this one's kind of interesting where he's created an enum, and in this case a map of values that are associated with components, and renders them that way. So I thought maybe we could work through this, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to do. So let's go into our code, and let's make a new component, and we'll call it actually, let's do this. Let's make a new folder conditionals. And we'll get in here and we'll just we'll make a new component, and this one we'll call the if else component. And as always, we got to get React from React. And yeah, oh, thank you, Jen, Knitcode Monkey. My good friend Jen has joined us for the evening, and she's referring to what I mentioned earlier about having my first proposal accepted. Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate it. And hello there. Oh, I can't. Oh, your name, Louis? Is that what it was? Like you're trying to remember your name and trying to get better at remembering this. And Mr. Ren Recton is in here too. Hola, nice to see you. Buenas noches, right? It's pretty late in the evening right now. So yeah. Just if you're joining in, what I kind of wanted to cover was I wanted to go back to some basics, and I wanted to kind of talk about like different means of like doing conditional rendering in React. And if this is too boring, that's fine. I'm happy to like work on other things. This was just on my mind as something very beginner and something that might not be patently obvious to people, and so. I thought I would try and do this, but as always, feel free to send me your questions in the chat, and I'd be happy to work on that, or work on some of the things that you would like to see done. If y'all could do for me a favor, if you want, it's totally up to you, but if you ever thought about it, you could totally tweet this out for me that I'm streaming at the time, and maybe see if some of your friends want to join. I know it's kind of shameless, but I think the more of us, the merrier. So that's up to you. I would never have you advertise for something you didn't want to. So just thought I'd say that. I don't know why I'm like roasting tonight. So I think you guys are gonna get a good look at my bald head tonight. I think I'm gonna have to go hatless for a while. All right, so let's just make a stateless functional component. And this one will, what we're going to do is the most basic way of like kind of having conditional rendering, right? Like it's pretty simple. We might get a prop. Let's say we get a prop of a value, right? Like we're going to assign a value to if else. And very simply, if if not value in this case, like if value is a falsy value, then we can return something to start with. In this case, the value was falsy. So I mean, this is super basic. This should just make sense, because essentially what we're doing is, remember, JSX is just functions, right? Like this would be the same of, I could do this const falsy statement equals, and we can return the JSX, the value was falsy. And you know, it'd be the same as if we did falsy statement, like. And these are the things you start to recognize, that things are equivalent to other things. I mean, we don't even have to make it a function. It could just be that, and then we remove that, right? Like one of the greatest things about React to me is that it is just JavaScript. There's so little magic going on that, you know, whatever you can really kind of conceive of with your JavaScript, you're able to accomplish. So in this case, you know, I could, maybe this is how you or your team wants to organize your components, right? Actually, I kind of want to call this if else is fine. The value was truthy. And then, you know, we have the early escape statement here. Otherwise, we're going to return the truthy statement always. And expect default. Expect. Haha. I've been writing too many tests this week. Export default if else. And, you know, if we were to come over to our app and I'm going to just comment this out for right now. It's probably going to yell at me about that. It likes to, like, my linter loves to yell at me. You guys know that by now. Let's get conditional / if else, and let's do if else, and we'll just do value. Here's something I maybe haven't taught you about JSX. So the way JSX works is if you pass an attribute name like value in this case, but you don't assign it to anything, it defaults to true. It's really kind of a nice shorthand, in fact. And the reason they did that was so it would match expected behavior of something like this on, say, a button. You can just put the disabled attribute in HTML and your button is disabled. It wouldn't have made much sense to have to force someone to do this in JSX. So they made this nice little shorthand. As long as if you supply it with not assigning it to anything, it defaults to true. So we'll save this, and we shouldn't see any of our GitHub stuff anymore. We should just see the value was truthy. And that makes sense. That's what we expected. And, you know, if we set it to false, and if you didn't know, you will have to set it using the JSX brackets, right? Like, I might help if I save that. It'll refresh and it'll be falsy. Okay, so that was the first one on this list, right? Like all conditional renderings in React, if else. But there's definitely, this isn't really a great component, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's not great, but like there's some redundancy here. Like I'm creating values that I don't necessarily even need given what I get, right? So, and really what's the only difference here? The difference is this right here, falsy and truthy. So let's optimize this a little bit more. What we can do is we can get rid of all this and we can do this. We're going to use a ternary, but we're going to use it for less than just what component we'll render. We're going to use sorry, I got a little distracted by that. I'm going to get to the question in 1 second. We can use it to render different components. So right now, let's just use it to return different words. And this is actually very useful too. This statement is, and what we're going to do is we're going to have JSX right here, right? Like, and based on value, if it's hey everyone, we're going to give this another try. I hope this keeps working. For some reason, my computer's memory basically got overloaded and it stopped recording and it started dropping frames and not sending out the stream. So my apologies. I will try and be better about having minimal things running on my computer as I stream in the future. So sorry for that, and I hope I didn't lose you all. I'm gonna quickly, you know what? I'm gonna tweet about it real quick. I got it on my phone. If y'all give me a second. And the stream is back live. Join me again. Pretty please. Smiley faces. Thumbs up. All right. So back to what I was trying to cover. I need to get the server running again. I'm gonna bump this up so y'all can see me see what I'm typing better, but it's just yarn run start. And yay! So we've got our statement back. Oh, hey, Chrome decided to update. Maybe that was part of it. All right. Trying to pick up where I left off. We were covering ternaries and how they're useful in conditional rendering in React. And what I love about it is the ternary just gets so good. Like, and we'll see in a more contrived example further down. Like, if you get really skilled with your ternaries, you can do some really cool nested stuff. Or you can also do things like, if you really understand ternaries, like, all right, like a way to think of it also might be this. I'm getting a request on Twitter to link it to link people, so we'll do it. I believe that's the link. You're gonna get some real meta stuff right now. You're gonna watch me watching me. I think that's a little confusing. Looks like my buddy Jammin found it. So apparently it's showing an advertisement on my page. That's awesome. All right. So as I said, like, you know, ternaries are really great. And it's one of the simplest ways to do conditional rendering in React. Because most of the times we might only want to show one thing or another. But we have to be careful when we're doing ternaries, because this is evaluating what we might get is truthy, and when we don't really want it to. I've seen a lot of people accidentally return things like, you know, if value is, for instance, if value were to equal 0, like, that'll be falsy. So if we go to app real quick, right, like, it's not just false values, it's falsy values. So this should refresh and we should get falsy again. But if we were to do something like the string of 0, like maybe our types are wrong, that's going to evaluate to truthy. Hey Jammin, good to see you on the chat tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. You gotta text me or you gotta send me a message. We gotta get lunch again sometime soon. For those of you just joining, I had a very interesting week. My entire application engineering team was here in Portland the last few days. So if I seem extra tired, a little off my game, it's just because I'm exhausted, frankly, to be honest. But I wanted to be here for y'all. I wanted to spend a little time working on some stuff with y'all, and especially like just covering whatever is useful to you. Good to see that, Jammin. Yeah, so those of you just rejoining again, because I have the technical difficulties of my wonderful, I love my computer, but it only has 8 gigabytes of memory, and man, everything uses Chromium these days, and it just eats up my memory like crazy. And it's not working poorly. I can't justify buying a new machine yet, and I think I'm maxed out the way this board happens to be. I don't think I can bump it up to 16. I'm gonna have to look into it. But you know, we're doing a course on React Basics, on React 101, and like I just really wanted to make sure everyone understood like all the different ways we can use JavaScript in our JSX to conditionally render stuff. So Okay, Jammin, you put them kids to bed. Jammin's just this great guy. If you haven't already followed him, you need to go follow Jammin Holmgren on Twitter. He's a really great guy. He's been doing programming for really long, full of wisdom. He has founded and runs a company called Infinite Red, and they're like 100% remote employees. I think that's really kind of cool. And he also runs this really great conference here in Portland. They just had their first year this year, but it went splendidly. It's called Chain React, and it's specifically focused mostly on React Native. And so that's really awesome. React Native focused conference. But yeah, I know they're already planning all the stuff for the next year, making it bigger and better. If you want to come to Portland and you want to meet me, and maybe we can get a beer or so. I mean, I got a beer right now. Cheers to all you out there sipping a beer right now, or a drink, or whatnot. But yeah, it might be a good chance to spend some time together and hang out and get to know each other. So just wanted to give a shout out to my buddy. And he's going to miss all this. He's going to have no idea that I did the whole aw shucks treatment for him. But he's a good guy. Follow him on Twitter. All right. So we've already covered like if else and ternary operation, right? And there was a question earlier from Mr. Renrekton, I believe. I don't have the chat anymore because of the way this whole thing went down. I had to restart my computer, but I think his question was, I think what he was saying is like, why did I not have to put JSX at the end of this? I'm gonna guess that he's had to put his entire like file name every time he's imported something, and he's looking at this and he's like, what the heck is going on? This isn't related to conditional rendering, but it is related to React, and frankly, it's actually related to Webpack. So I will come back. I'll show you my Webpack config for this pretty simple build really quick. Webpack config. All right, so my Webpack config isn't all. I don't think it's that big and crazy, but right here is what you're seeing. In the config, like we're returning a config object. Actually, this is a little redundant. I could return it otherwise, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Maybe I'll fix it some other time. But under the resolve key, you can add extensions that will automatically get resolved. Oh, excuse me. And in this case, we want JavaScript file. Good golly, I think I have the hiccups all of a sudden. Oh, I hope it doesn't stick around. All right. What we tell Webpack in our config here is for extensions, we want these to automatically be resolved for us, which are our JS and JSX files. And so that's why I can have something like, for instance, in utils, just an index.js file that will automatically get resolved wherever I use that. For example, I think I'm using it here, right? I don't have to pass in the index part, partly because index is the default file grabbed, right? So like if you just have a folder and you do that, it'll grab the index file. If I had other util files like macros, I don't know, it would find either a macros.js file, or it would then find a macros folder and look for an index.js file in that. That's just understanding ES 2015 imports and exports, and also that goes even further back. It's understanding how that's how CommonJS also handles files. And so in this case, even though my extension is JSX, I don't have to add the extension to get the correct file because I'm letting Webpack figure out that it's resolving that for me. So I don't know if he or she's I'm assuming it's a he. It says Mr. Ren, so I hope I get that right. Mr. Ren Recton. I hope that answers your question. And if you're looking to make that work in your Webpack config, that's where you're going to look. You're going to look for resolve extensions. It takes an array of extensions. You could possibly get away with other things like I know back in the day some people used to name their files ES6. You had to with when I first started doing ES6, I was still in Rails, and in order to get the Babel working in Rails, it had to have this extension, and then I don't know. I've never tried it, but you can maybe get it to do that if you really wanted it to do so. I don't know. I've never tried. I'm sure it would work in my case because I have a loader set up for that, but that's how that works. So yeah, I need a sip of beer. I've gotta have my streaming fuel. Actually, I told my wife, I'm gonna take a small aside here real quick. I told my wife that I was gonna ask y'all. I've been thinking and considering this winter switching from drinking a lot of beer because let's face it, the gut is it's not great. It's getting a little bigger each year, and I got to work on that. And winter is a time where I definitely don't get enough activity. I'm sure you don't. Maybe you get tons. Maybe you're a winter activity-aholic of some sort, but I want to try maybe sipping some whiskeys this winter. I've not really dove into liquor before, so I'm willing to take your whiskey or other liquor recommendations in the chat. Let me know. I would appreciate it because I would like to make my endeavor into it at least a well palatable one. So I know that's not code, but I appreciate you all doing me a solid and helping me out. And who knows, maybe you make some good recommendations to each other in there. So if you happen to drink any good whiskeys, and let me know. I'm looking to experiment, looking to try. All right, we examined our Webpack issue. I'm not going to save those changes. And let's get back to conditionals in React. I know this is a beginner course. Keep that in mind. There might be someone out there who really just doesn't get this yet. So that's why we're covering it. And if you do get it, that's awesome. I hope my wonderfully soothing voice is enough for you. Right? Jen, there you go. Jammin only drinks a Diet Coke and coffee, so not much help there. He is fully caffeinated, people. I don't know what he uses to come down in the evenings. Maybe just exhaustion. I think, Jammin, correct me, I think you have 3, 4 kids? I can't quite remember. And I hope that's not offensive in any way. I know it's a lot. Jen, whiskey tasting in React 101. Yes, this could be a thing. Just each week trying a whiskey. Although I can't drink that much whiskey that I would need a new bottle every week. Mr. Ren Recton has the great suggestion of Breckenridge whiskey. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna search these. Breckenridge whiskey, and I'm just gonna store these here. All right, there we go. Cool. I'll move it out of the screen, but I'm going to store that for later. 4 kids are a good decaffeinator. That makes sense. Get yourself hyped up, and then work so hard once you're done with work to hang out with them and do the dad things, and all of a sudden you're ready for bed, I bet. Okay. So as you guys know, I get on these tangents. I'm sorry. I hope you love them. I love them. Y'all are good people. I love you. Right here. Okay. I love this stuff. It's so good. All right. The logical and operator. This one's also a really great way to do conditional rendering. So a lot of times I'll use this for arrays, right? I might do something like, let's say items, and I'm actually going to start adding some prop types to this. Nope, that's not the library anymore. What I want to do is I want to conditionally render parts of my UI based on the length of items. And we already saw that because it's JavaScript, we have to keep in mind truthy and falsiness, right? Like, so when our array is of a length of 0, we can actually use that value to coerce conditional logic. So let's put some boilerplate around this fake list of items. Well, let's just give it's an unordered list because I have no idea what's going on here. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's give it a div. Let's give it a div. We're going to wrap it around. And there's a reason I'm saying let's not put the... Oh, that's ugly. All right. Here's a really typical JSX conditional pattern, right? So you might do something like items length, and if you don't care about an empty state and you only care about a full state, you'll do this, right? Like if items length is not 0, if it's 0, this will be false, and the next part of the statement won't, the next part of the expression won't evaluate. If you know your JavaScript, this is kind of a abuse of the and operator. So and works, right, by both sides needing to be true to evaluate. So in this case, like and requires the left to be true and the right to also be true. Okay? What's interesting about this is that these operators work such that if the left is false, the right side never gets evaluated. I never get evaluated, right? So you may have seen this trick before where you might have some Boolean you're waiting for, or even some coerced value. We can do that, coerced value, and run my function, right? This is a way to, this is kind of a shorthand way of not having to write if some coerced value run my function, right? And so you'll see this pattern a lot in React projects where someone is using this shortcut of the and operator to determine whether or not to render something. And so these are just common patterns in JavaScript, but I do know people that come to React and this is not their instinct to do it. For, you know, like my day job right now is in Ember, and everything has to be like this, right? Like, and an else, and they don't even have this option to do these nice little JavaScript things because we're in a whole nother language. We're in a template, right? And so I think these are really nice. These are just niceties of React. The fact that we get to use the language and leverage that instead of using like having to learn a whole nother domain, basically, some other language. So in this case, what's going to happen is if items length is 0, meaning I didn't give it any items. In fact, let's do the prop types real quick for it. If else prop types equals items is prop types dot array. I'm just going to make an array of strings. String. Okay. And we'll set some default props. And we'll just set it to an empty array, right? So if our array is empty, we're not going to show anything at this point. But if it is full, what we can do is now we're again in an expression, so we need to use the brackets one more time, but we can just do items.map and give us item, and we want to return a key of equal to the item. It's just going to be a string. That's going to be fine. The item, and close it off, right? So yeah, this is a really handy way of handling conditionals in React. Like, and you'll use this probably over and over and over again. So let's quickly make a few items. We can hand it an empty array, and we should see nothing unless I've clearly made a mistake. Unexpected token. I guess I probably don't need the second brackets there. Oh, that's not the file. Probably don't need these brackets. Wow, I do not like that. We are resetting prettier settings. I'm gonna make it even shorter for the sake of just learning today. I have the font way bumped up for you guys and gals. I'm sorry, I'm working on that. It's a little bit better. Okay. So if we have a length, I want you to evaluate the next part of the expression, right? We give it an empty array, and we should see nada. Why am I seeing 0? That is not what I was expecting. That's interesting. I think I may have run into a little bug right now that might be doing something I'm not expecting. I'm wondering if item's length is getting coerced to a string, and I'm almost certain it is. So here's a little trick. If you ever get that bug, here's another way to force it to be a Boolean. Yes, that is what I was expecting. Well, you know, that's how things go in programming, right? We run a little unexpected things all the time, and I'm just drilling down to the component to make sure. Yeah, so my items array is 0. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you. Tyler, I'm the best I can say is I know it's gonna sound dumb, but if I'm not loud enough, I'm not sure what I can do right now. Can I? I don't know. I think most people can hear me, so I'm not sure what to tell you, man. Yeah. Based on the chat, sounds like it's just you. I'm so sorry. I wish I could fix that, but I can't. Maybe just make sure your volume's up. And if I'm not loud enough, I can work on, in the future, being louder for people. So I'm always open to feedback, people, about what I can do better with my streams. You can send me a tweet. You can send me a direct message if you want. I really appreciate the conversations we've gotten to have. So, yeah, you can always give me feedback that way. I'm happy to learn, try and improve this. All right. So we kind of had to do a little finagling there. So this is a good bug to know. Items.length, I think, is going to get coerced to. I'm going to leave a little comment here, because I think this works in a ternary. It doesn't work with a logical AND operator, but dot length is problematic with the AND operator because 0 is coerced to 0 by JSX. I think that makes sense to me why this happens, because essentially it needs to be able to put just the number 0, right? JSX has to understand this right here as a string that it can show. So if this reloads, yeah, so it's showing something. Why did it show more than I expected? Oh, because it added that, and then right here, right? Like, let's uncoerce that. I mean, let's coerce it. Yeah, let's force it to be a Boolean. So that's why that error happens, because JSX has to take 0 and treat it as if a string, because you might do something like 100, and you certainly, or I should put the right number of zeros for that, 100, and you know, it has to know that those zeros are part of a string, is something to set as inner HTML, as the text to an element, or inner text, I should say, not inner HTML. And so I think that makes sense to me, and I should not have been as surprised by it, but it's good to find these little quirks, because you'll need to kind of keep them in your mind, or if you ever run into something where some random zeros getting added, at least you know why now. So, so that's good to know. Be careful about your zeros and your truthy and falsy values. Okay, so this is another basic thing, but I mean, this is something you can do. We can force a value, and if it's false, we won't ever run this half, and if it's true, we'll run the other half. So maybe a better way to handle this, and I think a way that won't require this Boolean word, is if we move on to using a ternary again, right? So a lot of times you might have a list like this. You'll be expecting items, maybe they're users, maybe they're items in your that you're doing an e-commerce site or something, right? And it's really helpful to give your application not just full states where you have the items you expect. Oh, I'm so sorry. But also empty states. So when we have length, we'll want to, you know, put one set of markup like this. And I think Jen will be really happy that I finally added the list. Yeah, Jammin, it's totally right. And I will get to that in a second. I want to close this off, get it all working. So Jammin is talking about what's called the double bang operator. So if you didn't know, one way to force coercion of a value to a Boolean is when we do this, we are already forcing coercion. We're saying if not items.length, which means items.length has to first be coerced into a truthy or falsy value, and then we need the opposite of it. So say items.length is 0. That means items.length will get coerced into a Boolean, which would be false. And then we're going to give it the not, right? So we've just gotten the negation of our coercion. And what he's saying in the chat with the double bang operator is this is shorthand for coercing to a Boolean that is the value that you would expect. So if items.length is 0, it's gonna get coerced to false. We'll make it true, and then we need to flip it one more time to finish the coercion back to false. So it's a very common shorthand in JavaScript. The reason I purposely wrote Boolean, not to call Jammin out, because he's totally right. This is common enough in code bases. You would probably see it, and if you were maybe a mid-level to a senior dev, I totally expect you to see this and know what it is. If you're a junior dev, I would not expect you to know it, and that would be fine. But what I've kind of started to do in the last maybe 6 months, maybe a little longer, is I've actually started to use the Boolean the constructor this way to do coercion, because it's very explicit of what I'm doing. There's no trickery. There's nothing behind the curtain. You don't actually really even need to understand that I'm flipping a value twice to get back to where I am. So this was just maybe a preference of mine. I think to some degree you gain clarity in the legibility, but honestly, for me, I know I can understand both of them just fine. I don't know that I actually gain much, but what is nice about using Boolean from time to time is, let's make this example a little more contrived. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to return all of this, and I'm going to add a filter on my items. And what that filter will be, since I decided I want to pass in some strings, I haven't made them yet, but I'm gonna filter Actually, instead of strings, let's do shape. I want to do. I'm gonna give it a name, and so I'll do item.name in both places. And that'll be a string, but should display will be a Boolean. Okay. Okay, so my items are going to be objects now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter based on should display. See if I can remember how to do this. So what I'm going to do is const items to use. This is very contrived. I wouldn't actually do it. I don't know that I would do it this way. But let's map these to get the prop we're expecting. No, I don't think so. I don't have an extra. This is just a block statement, jamming. Let's pull off the should display. I'm just making an array should display. Actually, no, that won't. Okay, I'm just gonna make my point. I won't actually write it this way, but I have started to do stuff like this, where you just pass a function in a point-free style, and this will work really well if I knew items were actually like booleans. In this case, maybe this doesn't really work because I needed a little more time to come up with an example, but this is another reason why I kind of like Boolean. You can use it this way if you're ever filtering based on a property that's true or false, or maybe the values themselves are true or false, because what's going to happen under the hood, right, is if you're into functional programming at all, you know that these values will actually get supplied like this. If I don't supply, if I don't write out an anonymous function or anything like that. So those are equivalent, the two things I just wrote. You can't do that. You could do x return double bang x. And I guess that's probably the same amount of characters, so I leave that up to you. But that's kind of what I was going to try and explain really quick with all this hooliganism. You know what? I'm too lazy to change those, but I am going to go back to just having that. All right. And if we have an empty state, sorry, no items to display. So I think we should have a pretty good component right here. All right. I know this is a little, I'm going to take a second down here. I know this is a little off topic, but is there a reason you would choose to write a functional React component as opposed to a class style component? Sure, there are actually plenty of good reasons to write them as stateless functional components versus class components. A lot, and one of them being my linter will force me to. It will yell at me if I don't use any of the lifecycle methods or create a method on the component that I should write it as a stateless functional component. I know that's not really a great answer to you, but so part of it is performance to some degree. You're getting some baggage when you use the class component that you might not need. But there's a trade-off there. You're writing a very simple component, but you're not able to optimize it in terms, specifically in terms of like using should component update, right? We talked about lifecycle hooks a couple weeks ago. With a stateless functional component, you're not going to be able to write that. Now, you can write higher order components that will implement that. There's, for instance, the Recompose library, which I do want to talk about at some point. It's just not React Basics yet. Give me a couple, I think in a couple weeks we might be at a place where it really makes sense to talk about this. But the Recompose library has a pure higher order component, which will take a stateless functional component as an argument and return you a pure component that's already got should component update set up. I encourage you to go look at the documentation for React pure component versus React.component to understand the difference between the two. And I would encourage people to worry about knowing the difference between component and pure component when they start hitting performance issues and not prior. There's no reason to prematurely optimize. If you're in a big app, you're possibly using it, but maybe not. Ryan Florence has some great articles about avoiding premature optimization in that case. But other reasons to maybe choose this, and this is getting into functional programming itself, so it's kind of above what's going on here. But one thing that can be done with stateless functional components is because we know that they're pure functions, we can actually memoize them. So memoization is a computer science term that refers to the caching of computed values in a function. So these are just functions, right? Another way to write this would be function if else items return this, right? We can write this as a normal function. In fact, you'll see some people prefer to write their stateless functional components this way. But one thing you might not know about functions is that we can give them like properties. So we could give it a cache, and then we can say if essentially what would happen is we would store a calculated value in the cache. And in this case, we might stringify the items like items.name.stringify. I don't know. We would do something where we could take the props that we're given and make a key out of them, right? And that key would go in our cache, and the result would be its value. And then when the function runs, we can say, if I find that key, return the value without ever computing anything. So stateless functional components are capable of being memoized, which is another potential optimization. I've yet to really need it, but it's fun to know. I've used memoization a little bit in I've used memoization a little bit in some React apps, but it had little to do with the component itself. And then Jammin does make a good point now. There are some people, I think Steve Kinney today even wrote about it. Some people are preferring to use classes all the time, and his argument was this, and maybe Jammin can back me up in the chat. But some people don't like the stateless functional component. They don't want to write it because if you ever have to refactor it to not be stateless again in the future, it's a big pain in the butt to move it from being this function to a class. I don't think it's that painful for me. I can do it in a couple keystrokes, right? I write a class here. I would write extends component, assuming I already had component in. And then I can do a render method and return, and then here is the only, it's a little extra work. This like const items equals this dot props, and then I get rid of this line and almost have it. Oh, I need a second one. I don't find it that hard to change, but I could see getting old. So some people choose to do this even for their simple components that could be stateless functional components, so that later if they ever need to add a method, my method they can add methods really quickly or state or whatnot with no problem. So Shirley joining the chat. If y'all don't know, who Shirley Wu is. You need to check her out. She's also a Twitch streamer. She tends to stream on Mondays, and she is not only a really good friend. I've really appreciated getting to know her this year. She's awesome, but she is an amazing, amazing, amazing data data. What would you data visualizer? I guess she does data visualizations as her job, and I'm always up for trying to promote my friend's work. But if you every line of Hamilton, like you have to go check this out if I can. Why can't I find the exact website, Shirley? There. Like, they've kind of embedded. I mean, but this is just cool. I want y'all to go check it out on your own time, but she's awesome, and she totally deserves this. Go check it out. But yeah. Friends, tell me what you're doing that's like cool and awesome. I'm happy to go check it out, and I'm happy to share it on the stream. I have no qualms about that. I want y'all to love the stuff I do, and I want to love the stuff you do. So, just always, you can always let me know. I'm here for you. Just letting you know. Okay, so we've kind of been. So I think we covered that. Like I think maybe Mr. Renrecton. Why do I struggle so much with your name, man? Mr. Renrecton. I think he can. You can let me know in the chat if I answered your question well. So I'm happy to continue to clarify if I didn't. Good to know that the panel went well. Shirley, we'll chat about it more later. Maybe tell us what kind of food you're waiting for. Because frankly, I might need a little snack here in a little bit. We had spaghetti tonight for anyone who cares, which it always tastes great, right? But you're hungry like an hour and a half later. How about Matt? Okay, Matt, I will do my best to remember that, and I will call you Matt from now on. Friends, I have to let you know, I love it so much being able to interact with you in the chat. I wish I could find a way to have the chat on the YouTube feed when I take these videos and I upload them to YouTube, because I feel like people on YouTube miss out on why we are having the interactions that we are having. Yeah, but it's awesome, and I'm oh man, it just makes me so happy. I was so exhausted when I started this stream tonight, and I'm already feeling a little amped up. So all right, I want to make this my. I want to take this back to my stateless functional component. I suppose I could just Command Z it. That would be the lazy way to do it, right? I'm worried I'm going to go too far. I didn't go too far. Okay. So, now this time, I think this does a much better job. I know I've used this trick in the past, and I think it has to do with the difference between how the logical operator works and how the ternary, the logical AND operator works and how the ternary works. So the ternary will evaluate the beginning statement, in this case items.length, and I think it'll do, it knows that's not what it's returning, so it does the coercion there. So in this case, like a length of 0 will coerce to false, and it will then go to the right half of our ternary. For those of you who haven't seen ternaries before, I know years ago when I first learned them, they were confusing as heck to me in JavaScript, and now they are now one of my favorite things possible in the language, because they hold a lot of logic in such small syntax. But you'll have some kind of statement here that will be evaluated, or and then afterwards you'll this is if true, this will run. If false, this will happen, right? And what's key to know about ternaries is Oh, that's not how I wanted to indent that. Let's do that. I gotta learn some Vim skills or something so I go faster. Okay, so this will look a little funny right now. We have our statement and we're returning the first part if it's true, the second part if it's false. What's great about this is we can start a whole new ternary here, right? And you'll actually see this happen a bunch, and you'll see it in if you go through this article that I linked to earlier, the Robin Weirich Conditional Rendering React. Down here, he'll show multi-layered conditionals, and right here, multi-level conditional rendering, and you'll see something like this, where once we get to the false part of a ternary, we're at a place where we can completely evaluate again. So we might have a second statement or second thing we're going to check. We'll call it the second check. We'll call this one the first check. And we'll get to a second check, and then we'll do something like this, or do that, or you can continue to go on down. I know this is really kind of absurd at this point, but the point is like how you can learn to kind of read these nested conditionals. Now, I want to explain, this might not be the most legible code for your team, so I'm not saying go out and make all your long if else's, like your nested stuff, into giant ternaries. That is not what I'm advocating. What I'm trying to show you is, one, how the ternary really works. When we hit the false part, we're at a new place where we can evaluate a statement and go again. It's kind of like in the AND operator we showed before, like true and run my function, right? Like we talked about, this doesn't evaluate until this is true, right? This is kind of the same thing but in a different way. This won't evaluate until this is false, so it's like the opposite of that. And so this is false, this will evaluate. Well, it's going to evaluate the full thing that it is, and if it's another ternary, we can make another level of conditionals. And say this was false again, it's not going to evaluate this portion until this is false, and so then it'll do that. I'm just trying to help you understand how the ternary works and why it's useful. In our case, if items length is a true value, this never will get evaluated, and it'll just get tossed. It's not just that it doesn't get into our component, it's that it's garbage collected. It's not useful until our function is run again. So I just wanted to point that out. I want to make sure this is working, so we'll come back over to our component real quick. It's not doing the auto reload because I have some linting errors that I don't want to deal with. I guess I could deal with them. I'll do this. If we get rid of that, I can get rid of this. I think that'll handle the linting errors. Compiled successfully. So we'll still get sorry no items to display. Okay, I was expecting an object. I need to fix this. Array of, and I said prop type string before, I think. I'll just give it some strings. Make it nice and simple. And then I think our, okay, we're nice and clean. It's not gonna bug me anymore. Let's make some items real quick. Foo, bar, and baz. My typical 3 words I use. I think everyone does. I've started to see some, I don't know what this is, but quux. If someone can look up what a quux is for me, maybe tell me in the chat. That would be interesting. Oh, I got something wrong in my if else. I'm showing names. I only need to show the item because they don't have any name properties. But this should work, and there we go. So this is how you'll see this a ton in React code, using ternaries to display conditional logic. And maybe this is a little ugly, but you know, you could eventually have whole other components to show instead. I'm going to take a second to catch up on the chat. I think Atreus has been saying something. The only thing I would say is if anyone knows any good React resources in Spanish, I'm working with a junior dev on my team from Argentina, and it's hard enough to explain the nuances of React and Redux without the language barrier. Oh my. Yeah, I can understand that. He knows more English than I know Spanish, and we're working through. We speak more through pseudocode. That is that's interesting. Atreus, I don't have a great answer for you right now, and to be completely honest, I barely know Spanish. I took like 5 years of it. I don't know any of it myself. I would be really stretched, just like you, to try and help them out. So I think what I would have to say is what we need to do is it's a couple things. It doesn't solve your problem right away, but it sounds to me like first we need to like promote translations of like the React docs and maybe even the Redux docs. I don't know. Maybe there's I know the maintainers of Redux. I know Dan and I know Mark. And I could maybe prod them to see if this is something they could put on their radar. But Redux docs in Spanish, I'm sure you looked it up, but I'm just gonna do it for my own edification. Okay, Redux docs Spanish. I don't know if this will help you at all, but hey, Osmel Mora, he follows me on Twitter. We've interacted a bit. He's really cool. So I hope this maybe has some stuff to help you, but I know it doesn't. I know it probably doesn't help you in your direct situation because you're talking about the nuances and stuff. But I guess push the projects you use, like the open source projects, ask them for translations. Or if you know someone who can do them, like maybe sit down and work with them on it. I don't know what else to say about that, but I think that would be really challenging, and you're totally right. I think code might be the only way I would have to do it. And I know that's really challenging because, one, you want to teach. You don't want to give them all the answers. You want to give them the information they need, the información, right, to accomplish the task that they're trying to do. And you want them to have the skills necessary to fix the problem and grow as a developer on their own. So I'm sorry I don't have like a really great I'm sorry I don't really have a great answer or resources for you. It's just not a problem I've really thought about right now. But I'm also very happy to I can put out a tweet about and just ask. You know what? I'm gonna do it on the stream. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go to Twitter right now. I don't know if it'll be helpful at all, but I'll tweet it out for you. We'll hashtag it Redux resources for Spanish speaking developers. Can you reply to me with your best resources? I told you I'd try and help you out, so we'll see what happens. You can totally if y'all see that tweet and you want to retweet it for me and spread the word, maybe some of your friends can help out. I will shamelessly take that too. So let's get Atreus some help for his teammates. So, but yeah. Okay, so we've covered a couple of the conditionals. I want to cover one that I got to use a while back while I was working at Second Story. I wrote a blog post about it. I know y'all probably don't really need to see my blog, but if you didn't know, KyleShevlin.com, you can come here. I've been doing more posting, like cross posting on Medium, but I do post everything I write also on my blog, and I'm gonna kind of cheat. I don't have search yet. I need to take some time over a weekend and like add that in, but let's see, is it in React? I hope, yes, this one. So I wrote an article about how to dynamically render React components, and I won't bore you with the details, but what I ended up doing was using a switch case to determine what to show, and it actually works out really, really, really well. And now that I've grown a little bit, I can see an optimization here that I might be able to do. So we'll make that optimization here in our own code as we're going on. So okay, how to use a switch statement for conditional rendering? Well, we're gonna blow this all away, and let's see. I'm not sure items make sense. Let's make it a singular item, but we'll make it an object, and we'll give it a type property that we'll check, just like my little blog post there. So type, and this will be a string. And what I'm going to do is here for my items, let's make a few objects with types. Type foo. I know, so original. Type bar, and we'll do type as. So you might find that you're getting, this is going to be a very contrived example, but you may run into this sometime. You may do some sort of fetching for data, but maybe you conditionally decided what to fetch. Maybe you needed to fetch some like shopping cart items, and then you need to render the shopping cart, the shopping item component, or that same fetch might return I don't know, a set of users or profiles, and you want to conditionally choose which basically like list component to send these items to, or that one item to, or something like that. Once you get past 2 or 3 or 4, where an if else and a bunch of nested if else's or even ternaries make no sense, a switch might be a really great thing to reach for. And it just works the same way you would use a switch in anywhere else. If you're like me and you started to use Redux so much in the last year, like switches have become very common in my code. I had never really used them before, but you get so used to it that you start to realize you can use them all over the place. So what I kind of do is if there's a default, maybe like in my blog post you'll look at, if for some reason there was a type that I didn't already have a component built for, I just handled it by saying, sorry, something broke, we're looking into it. I don't remember what, but so actually, I will go back to my items and give it an unmatching one just to prove that it'll do it. We'll give it a quux. And maybe type quux. Okay. And then we'll handle all the other cases it could be. So foo, we will render actually, this should be a return, sorry. We'll return, imagine we had a foo, I'll make these components real quick, but case bar, turn bar. You see where I'm going with this, right? Like, in fact, I'm sorry. I should not have made my own components like that. That's just wasting my time. But this is the idea, right? My fingers will not type tonight. So, like, switches can be really useful too for There must be something wrong. Oh, yep, it doubled. Okay. I must have some code wrong there somewhere. What is wrong with my switches? What's the code telling me? Switch. Oh, it's because the JSX isn't on the same line, I think. That doesn't make any sense to me. Oh. That should be fine, as far as I understand it. We'll figure it out. We always do. Okay, what's it telling me is wrong? Unexpected token on line 6.2. Well, I will quickly go check out the guy's article because I don't want to sit here and stew why I got it wrong. Switch state. He's doing that. What did I do in mine? Oh, I did put it in another function. So that might... Sure, we can do that. No big deal. Maybe this has to be evaluated as a function. I'm not sure. I don't entirely know why, but we should be able to do something like that. Looks like it's saved. Did it save? Is it still giving me problems? It's still giving me problems. It don't like me. Oh, you know, it probably needs me to make this a full expression, and in order to do that, failed HTML entities must be escaped. Oh, this is Airbnb's linter being really stubborn. I think we might have finally wrapped it up. No, we didn't. This will default if a type isn't matched. Oh no, what did I do? Switch. Line 5, unexpected token. What is going on? Switch. Let me check the article really quick. That is kind of what I expected. That looks great. That's closed off. Our switch has that. We have our anonymous function. Why don't we do this? Instead of doing that, instead of doing all this crazy crap, let's move our switch into something else. Const determine how about just get right component? This is a bad name, and we'll take a type and we'll pass it to the rest of our component, and yeah, we'll just return all of this, and we'll take our type. Okay, and then what we can do is get right component item type. Let's see if that works. What am I doing wrong? All right, it doesn't like that. I think it's because it was trying to. I think my guess is that it thought I was implicitly returning it. What on earth am I missing? I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna restart my Webpack. I don't know why it's doing that. Like, I don't even have that markup anymore. It was showing me older markup for when I had... Oh, see, it was just Webpack caching some stuff wrong. You gotta love that. Folks, you're gonna... If I can give you anything in your life that you might need to know, there will be times that you will have done nothing wrong and your code will still not work because something is stored in cache or there's some broken module somewhere that's beyond your control, and you will waste potentially hours of your life. And if you had hair, you might pull it out, or in my case, my beard, I'll stroke it to death, right? This will happen. do your best to keep your cool and to remember that, you know, sometimes you just need to go clear cache, especially if you're doing front-end development. So, okay, this will default if a type is not matched. I think this is happening because I actually still have a bunch of items, and this is still an array instead of an item. So a better way to do this would be like item 0 to get the first one, and it should come out as foo. If I did it, items is assigned a value but never used, no unused vars. I thought I got rid of items. Item, div, get rid of item type. Type, passed in. App. Oh, because I named it and I'm not using it. Oh, I just misspelled it there. That's it. So assume instead that this is actually dynamic, but for the case of our experiment right here, like it's not because I'm lazy. But you know, you could have something that dynamically changes which items getting sent into your component, and then check the type and change which component you would get based on it. That's how a switch statement works. And then just to be clear, like if it doesn't get a type that it matches, like we can give it the fourth one, right? Items 3. Gotta love 0 indexing. It should be like I have no matching type. There we go. So that's how a switch statement works. I think I see a few things in the chat that I need to catch up on. Jammin', that should be a t-shirt. Oh, guy. Okay. If any of y'all care, this is a pretty cool t-shirt. Some people, I'm gonna stand up a little higher, right? Like you see this. I've got my code block t-shirt on. It's one of my favorite t-shirts. I think the whole keep calm and clear cache could be a really funny t-shirt idea for a really cool company I want to share with y'all, called Developer.io, and it's a brand for those who build awesome stuff for the interwebs, mobile devices, and everywhere in between. And that's where I got this this t-shirt. You can see it over here on the right. This would be if you want some cool, funny t-shirts as a developer, like Git happens, you might be able to find some good ones. Just thought I would share that with y'all. That's Developer.io. There's no vowels in developer. So if you find something cool, I don't know, maybe tweet me a picture of it when you get it. So, or I don't know, you can donate me enough money to get a new hat. I would love a dope hat. I'm just saying, just kidding. You don't have to donate money to me, but I would accept gifts of hats. Just saying. All right. I'm so glad that I have y'all in the chat to help me like debug my code. I'm seeing people saying like the type wasn't defined, and people saying like I wasn't returning things correctly, and you're totally right. I've got like 20 more minutes that I generally stream for, and so I wanted to cover this interesting one that I'd never seen before, which was conditional rendering with an enumerable. In this case, he's just using an object. And if we look at this really close, it should make some sense, right? So he's got a stateless functional component notification that gets some text and some state. And what he's doing is he's doing this very clever. He's given it an object literal that has key value pairs, in this case, info, warning, or error. And then he's rendering out different components based on the state. And if the state comes back as the string info, it'll do this. It's very similar to our switch statement, but instead of having like our state checker be kind of at the top of the switch, we don't have, instead of having it there, it just ends up being object keys. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure if I would use it all the time, especially if you wanted to have something like a default case. switches will give you the default case that I don't think this object type will, but why don't we give it a try? I'm gonna blow this away, and we'll make a div, and I'm gonna change these to parentheses. Okay, and then what we will do is we're gonna check our type, and I'm doing this inside of the function. I just realized I'm doing that. My syntax there we go. Okay, and then essentially, you know what, I kind of find that a little confusing. I'm going to try this again. And in fact, I'm going to get rid of that function, and we're just going to do it this way inside of here. No extra function. I'll fix that indentation in a moment. But what I'm going to do... Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Sorry, I'm figuring it out as I go. I'm going to have... I'm going to create an object up here called comps. And if the type is foo, I want you to return foo, just like we had before, right? If the type is bar, we'll return a paragraph of bar, and you know the drill by now. Oh, I cannot type tonight. I know I've said that, but I really can't. So, and then what we're essentially going to do is comps item type, and this should make a lot of sense. In fact, we don't need this. And pull this up on one line. Okay, so this is the enum way of handling this problem. Oh, and Matt also makes a really great point about switch can be more than one. What he's referring to, sorry to jump back and forth, but I said switch has the benefit of a default case, but he's also true. Like if there's multiple matches, you can have them work that way. So I'll show you what I mean. Say we have type, we can have foo, and we can have bar. So if either of these match, return this. That's another nice thing about switches. You can have different types still return the same thing. So there might be a case in your usage that this makes sense, where multiple cases, and you could do more if you wanted Baz. Because the way switches work, it'll just go down the cases until it finds something that it matches and evaluates. So you can totally do that. Thank you for bringing that up, Matt. I'm glad we were able to show people that. But this should work pretty much the same, except I don't know what's going to happen with type quux, because we haven't given it a default case. It doesn't have available. I think it'll just not display anything in there, because it'll basically not find anything that matches, and that does turn out to be the case. With no matches, it doesn't display anything. Our type is quux, and there was nothing that matched that. So let's pull out a different one like Baz, and it should match the Baz component in our hash in our object, and give it back. Yep. So yeah. Jammin's totally right. It returns undefined, right? Like if we did like const obj equals name foo, and I asked for obj dot age, which is a property not there, it's going to come back undefined. So that's just JavaScript, right? And we say this over and over and over again with React, but it's just JavaScript, which I just find to be the most wonderful thing about the framework. Is that, like, I know I'm a broken record about it, but the fact that I can solve problems by leveraging the language versus leveraging a framework or an API, that gives me power. That gives me freedom as a developer to solve problems rather than hunt through docs for some minutia somewhere that I maybe will never find, or requiring someone who's already done all the search through the minutia to tell me what I should look at and what I should know. So, I actually would love to hear from y'all. Like, what is your favorite thing about React? I know some of you are just getting into it. I know some of you have been doing it for a really long time, but I was thinking it'd be really cool if y'all tweeted to me, or maybe even in the chat. But I'll probably ask this on Twitter later this week. But I would love to know, like, what are some of your favorite little things about React? I have some of my own, but I would just love to hear from other people, because it's really great to get those like differing opinions and just understand what people really love about this stuff. So we are getting close to near the end of the stream. I've got about 10 more minutes. You guys know, you guys and gals know, I'm still working on that one. My apologies. Friends, you all know I generally cut it off around 10 o'clock because I want to be a decent husband and spend time with my wife before going to bed. And I appreciate every one of you staying up late with me. I know this might be well past some of your bedtime, so I want y'all to know I do appreciate it. But if you have any questions this week, I always like to say about the last 10 minutes, please feel free to ask away in the chat. I want to make sure you have a chance to speak up, and if I can offer any advice or any help, I will try. So. But yeah, so we've kind of worked through today. We worked through all these different conditional ways of working with React. I know it's oh, see, look, and he even did it that way. He pulled it out just like I said I did. Or you can do this. You can make it a function. Look at all these different ways you can do the enum. This one's really kind of interesting. So if you look at this example right here, and if you haven't done so already, his Twitter handle is I just clicked on the wrong thing. His Twitter handle is this right here, rYrook. Go check him out in his React course. It's good stuff. But this is a really interesting idea right here. If you're getting multiple props coming in, you can make a key out of them, and then match the keys to different types of combinations. In this case, true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. I think that's kind of really an interesting way to conceive of how I conditionally display React components. Like, especially if you got into even more. I mean, yes, if you added a third one, you'd end up with... I can't even do the combos. I really can't remember that kind of mathematics. I have to sit down and remember how to do that stuff. But we're increasing the amount so much. But it could potentially be a really interesting tool to have available to you. Just some JavaScript idea to have available to you, whether it's React or something else in the future. They're doing the same thing. It's just, I think that's a really neat trick, and I'm glad they showed it. And if you're wondering why this works, a common JavaScript thing some people don't know is that object keys are treated as strings, which is why you're able to have, you can make an object literal like const my obj, and you can make a literal just like we did above, like I'll give it my name Kyle. But you can also treat these as strings and do that. So I'm 32 if you needed to know. Or if you wanted to put dashes, like maybe you have an API that's returning keys that have dashes in it or something like that. Like maybe headers in like a request would be a good example. You can do like, I don't know, like app key howdy. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But some people don't know that. Like there was a time I didn't know that, so that's the only reason I'm sharing it, right? Like I did not realize that like object keys are strings that you can use to get get out of them. And I know it's because I didn't have like a mentor that could teach me the bracket syntax, right? And I was just lazy, and it didn't dawn on me to conceive of those things. But you can do age here, right? What this means, like, you can do what you were seeing in the other one. I could make a weird key that's actually like a template literal that takes values like foo and dash bar. Like, because they're strings, you can do object bracket syntax to get stuff out like that. It's really interesting, and just something to think about, to have in your, as I say, an arrow to have in your quiver. So I'm going to refresh the page. Okay. Jammin is thanking me for the stream. You're totally welcome. Glad you could make it. My friendly Kraken, that's an awesome name. Just want to say, happy wife, happy life. It's totally true. We should probably change it to happy partner, happy life. I do try and be inclusive to whichever mode of companionship you've chosen in life. Atris is greater than 2. I think it'd be easier to convert to a number and use bit flags, which I'm not sure I see much in JavaScript. It might mean that's not the right way to do it. I'm not sure what Atris is saying about greater than 2. Are you talking? Are we going all the way back to the switch statement stuff? I'm not quite sure. Give me some clarification. Jay Schlesh is asking, what color theme do you use in your text editor? So I am using Oceanic Next, but I've modified the theme a little bit. I'm going to pull up my, see if it'll come up. There it is. So I had to modify the theme because originally object keys were green, which is the same color as strings in the theme. And that was just impossible to read on translation files at work, because we would have, it's all objects and it's all strings. So it was just illegible. So I made them all yellow. And so my point, yeah, so I use Oceanic Next, slightly modified, and I use it in Sublime Text. I'm still using Sublime Text. I gave Adam a really good try for like 6 months. And it just used up way too much memory on my computer. And as anyone who tuned into the stream earlier knows, like, my computer does not have enough memory. It's kind of why it crashed. The open broadcast software occasionally just consumes a bunch of memory and crashes. And then I've tried VS Code a couple times. It's good. I'm sure I could make it be my main editor, but it just has enough pain points for me right now that I haven't felt I've gained anything. One of the big ones that I'm missing is the origami package in Sublime Text. So origami allows me to do all sorts of crazy, like, keyboard pane splitting, and I can just keep splitting panes to a ridiculous amount. Not that I've ever actually used it to do this many splits, but it is really useful, and it's something that I've used so long that I kind of have to have it. It's just how I work. It is kind of a little bit like Tmux in that you could just keep splitting windows. VS Code does not have that. Atom didn't have that. I don't know why. I'm not familiar enough with how those packages are written to understand why it works the way it does. But I really only use 2, 3, maybe 4 panels, but I'm so used to moving the files between the 2 panels with the way I've grown used to that it's kind of really painful for me to try and learn something new. I'm just becoming old and stubborn. That's really what I'm saying. So that's why I'm still on Sublime Text. Atreus was talking about the true, false, and true stuff. Yeah, there's probably definitely a better way than doing that. One thing to know about me personally is I'm a verbal processor. So this is actually why streaming works really well for me, because I think by talking, as weird as that sounds. So I was just kind of exploring the idea. A lot of times I'll think about an idea, and I'm not saying I confirm it to be a good thing. I'm just exploring it. You're probably totally right. Having a combo of 3 things is ridiculous, but, it might be useful. So I just like to kind of think about those things and keep them in my mind. Matt still likes Sublime, and he's yeah. I mean, if it's not broke, you're right. You can keep working it. Just be productive with whatever you want to use. That being said, I am starting to learn Vim a little bit. Trying to see maybe I'll get some gains from it at some point. Atria says they both use the Electron framework. You're absolutely right, which is also one of my reticences of using VS Code. VS Code is much more performant than Atom, but it still uses more memory on my computer than Sublime Text. And then Jammin asks about a gist of my Twitch setup. I can totally do that. I will say it right now, so you know, I'm using Open Broadcast Software, which is an open source broadcast software product out there. I have a decent webcam that I bought off of Amazon. It's 1080p. It's a Logitech webcam. And then the only other thing in my setup is I'm going to pull it into view, but I have a microphone here. I'm sorry if this is making things sound funny. But yeah, I just have a condenser microphone. I used to be a recording musician, and so I have some microphones sitting around that I can use, and so I just have a boom stand, and I switched up this week. I used to have the mic here where you couldn't see it, and then I decided, because I spend so much time talking in this direction, I'm going to put it right above the camera, but out of view, and I hope my sound has been a little bit clearer this week, and I'm hoping the recording will have slightly less sibilance. I've noticed I kind of sound like I have a lisp on the recording, even though I don't. So that's pretty much the extent of my Twitch setup. So, and then one last thing, I am broadcasting in mono. There's no reason for I didn't really have a reason to do it in stereo, and in fact I had an issue the very first week where because I'm recording into the right channel input of my input output device, like my mic is going through an actual I forget what they're called. Why am I blanking? I'm not going through like a USB hub. You don't really need to see this, but I apologize, but I'm going through an actual like a device where I have mic cables plugged into, but I'm going through the right channel right now. So if I was in stereo, you would only hear me out of your right speaker. And I figure for most cases, 2 headphones would give you monophonic sound in both ears. And I don't think most people would have stereo speaker setups where they'd have a left, a center, and a right. So I don't think stereo would make much sense for me, Atrius. And then Matt talks about ligatures. So one thing, Matt, is I think Sublime Text 3, if you have the the nightly edition, I think they did ligature support. Like if you've purchased Sublime Text, you can get ligature support. That I know. But yeah. Wow, that was a lot of questions there at the end. So, oh man, so many questions I need to wet the palate. Okay, I think that's probably gonna wrap me up for wrap this up for this evening. We maybe didn't make a lot of progress in the code, and maybe you didn't learn a lot, but remember, this is a React 101 course, so we're just covering some of the basics. Sometimes it just means learning just the JavaScript involved. And I think it's useful to even remember like some JavaScript basics. Sometimes we get lost in like trying to make just cool components and forgetting that like really at the end of the day, what this is we're mostly writing JavaScript. And so sometimes we need reminders of that, or sometimes we've never learned it. I know it can be really easy for people to dive into a framework and just follow examples without really understanding what's happening just below the surface. So thank you for participating in this with me as we walk through a bunch of conditional renderings and that kind of thing. Please explore. There is probably many more. There's probably many more ways you can do this. I was interested in And think about, is there any way an or operator could be used? It doesn't seem on the surface like it would be useful, but maybe. I'm also experimenting in my own project on making components that kind of handle this on their own. So rather than it's not anywhere. It's just it is a public repo. Uh, See if I can find it. But it's not built out at all. Please don't go and judge me on this, but like I have this idea of maybe like making some components that are like they're kind of functional programming words, but like this idea of like having a maybe component that if a value that you supply it is true, it'll render the just, and if it's false, it'll render nothing, or in this case, is nothing, not true and false, but nothing. And I think it could be kind of cool to kind of create components that handle all this conditional stuff on its own, even if it's just for fun. I don't know that it would be really all that useful for people on a team or in a production application, but it's fun to kind of experiment with this stuff, and I really encourage everybody to take some time and make sure you're still having fun doing web development. Build some stuff that's just silly from time to time, or just experiment. Like, don't worry about failing. So just go out there and do it. I do thank all of you in the chat for giving me some energy tonight. I know I was a little low energy earlier on, but I'm feeling really good now. So I know that's thanks to y'all and your interactions with me. I really appreciate that. So once again, thank you so much for spending time with me. I'll be back next week. I'll be sure to tweet out the time. And hit me up on Twitter, send me the messages, and I'm happy to help. So to everyone, sleep well, have a good night, or if you're all the way across the world, good morning. Hope your day is off to a really good start. I'm gonna head out, I'm gonna hang with my wife, and I'm gonna head to bed. Peace out. I'll catch you later.